Welcome to Talking WoW, the podcast where we talk about World of Warcraft, believe it or not. My name is Tom, and today we're going to be talking about Aberrus, the Shadowed Crucible, or, as I like to call it, Daddy Issues, the Raid. Joining me on the show today is my co-host of Talking WoW. It's Marty. Hello.
Hello. I'm still not tired of this raid. It's fun.
And that is the episode. That's all we needed to hear. Thank you very much for tuning in. No, of course, we've got a bit more to say about Aberrus and what's been going on there. It's the second raid of Dragonflight. And I think, would I be right in saying, Marty, after the Vault of Incarnates, we were having high expectations of what the next raid might deliver?
I would say so, yeah. I definitely think that the first raid was one of the better ones, especially that last fight was... it was a long fight, but it was fun when you started getting the hang of it. And yeah, so looking forward to this next one. Yeah, I would say that, yeah, sure, there are some expectations.
Okay, so where did it all go wrong? No, just kidding. But let's rate it a little bit before we venture into Aberrus, because actually something that I've enjoyed about Aberrus is not being inside it, and it's actually being in the zone of Zarlik Caverns and just having Aberrus there looming in the distance, that ever presence of just, that reminder of, hey, there's something not right down here, and that's it. And it even looks like a bit of it looks like a bit of an old god or something, doesn't it? It's got a bit of like an N'Zoth vibe about it, just from the outside. I don't know if you've picked up on that.
Actually, no, but now that you're saying it, I mean, it does make sense considering whose laboratory it is. So, maybe there already were some influences at that point.
Probably. And I got some, not quite comparable, but do you remember like back in classic vanilla when you're in Burning Steppes or what's the other one called? Searing Gorge, that's the one. And in the background you just have Black Rock Mountain just looming over, and again there's obviously some connection there with Aberrus and Black Rock Mountain, because this is where basically Shadowflame was created, and Black Rock Mountain is like a pop-up stall for Shadowflame, really, isn't it? So there's a bit of similarity there with just this looming. I mean, the mountain's not a structure, but you know what I mean. There's that presence there that it's just reminding you of, hey, there's something in there, and we're just gonna remind you about it while you're in the zone, doing pet battles or something like that.
I mean, I guess the same can be said about one of the best raids ever made, Ashcrown Citadel.
That's true.
Always there in the background as well. And even, from the get, it's like almost the center of the whole expansion, that you can see it in not every zone, but most zones, you can see it in the distance. So,
yeah, but this one, they stuck it underground and keep it hidden away, which again, I guess makes it a bit more sinister with what's to come when you eventually pass through those doors. And I mean, what happened when we passed through these doors, Marty? Because one thing I quite liked about this was that we've been doing questing in 10.1, and the storyline there with the Black Dragonflight, it literally leads you to the front door of this raid, and then it's like, hey, we're continuing the story inside. And I thought that seamlessness was just really nice, and just the flow of how the story is progressing. And that might be something that's been that way in Shadowlands and before that. Obviously I didn't play Shadowlands, so perhaps that's not a new thing, but it feels just like the entire narrative flow, even getting you to the raid and continuing that narrative within the raid, feels a lot more cleaner this time.
When you said and started asking questions about Shadowlands, I was sort of thinking back, and I don't even really remember how you got led into the dungeons, to the raids back then. But no, I definitely agree that it definitely feels like, we're pulling that thread and we're following that thread, and now we're here, and it does feel really, really seamless. I know it's not necessarily good podcasting to agree with each other, but I think I just agree with you that it does feel quite good this time around. We have a good idea why we're here, so yeah, it's pretty good.
And were you surprised? Because I think I was a little bit that we don't actually deal with any incarnates in here. I know we have like Farak in the zone initially, but he gets his Shadow Flame and he buggers off. So I think there was that expectation before this raid, like, oh, we're going to be tackling the incarnates now because we released them in well, we didn't do it. It wasn't our fault, but someone will probably blame us in the initial raid vault of the incarnates. So we kind of expected, I suppose, that naturally that would be the next threat, or some of those incarnates would be dealt with in this raid. Were you surprised that we weren't dealing with those straight away?
I mean, to be honest, I think in the beginning I did think that, yeah, I had the same idea, and I was like, I was already, before I even stepped foot inside the raid, I was like, oh, now we're just going after the incarnates, and we're going to kill them, one by one, and it will be like the usual WoW expansion where we just go in and kill a bunch of these new awesome characters that we just met, and we didn't actually, and so yeah, I was kind of surprised by that as well. But it makes good sense that Farak was not down here because of the laboratory. He was down here because of other things, and the laboratory is just something that is there, and we actually have other characters that is way more interested in this, and we need to go deal with them. So it actually makes pretty good sense without putting this month's big bad inside of it. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, surprised, but positively surprised, I guess.
And I suppose like the whole Sarka thing with him rushing off and chasing this power, chasing these whispers, like that was a loose end that needed to be tied up. And they also incorporated I wouldn't like to say the conclusion, but in a way, yes, for the whole Black Dragonflight, where who's going to lead them now? And this, I think, served as a great way to tell that story and perhaps shed new perspectives on what the Black Dragonflight's aim is.
Yeah. And one of the things that, I really liked that whole ending and how the raid ended when you include the extra quest line that you get when you end the dungeon. And I think this is one of those things where when you data mine stuff, you don't get the full picture. And so because I saw that cinematic, that kill cinematic before we killed the end boss and before we actually got access to this quest, so I just saw that end cinematic and was like, is that it? Is that the end? That seems kind of, anticlimactic. But then you actually play the quest line afterwards, and you go back into the raid in like your own little scenario, and you get another cinematic at the end of that, and all of a sudden everything makes sense. So I really liked that. But I had to be like, I had to get upset first when I only saw that cinematic, obviously, because it was so out of context to everything. So.
You wouldn't be a consumer on the internet if you were, instantly reacting to something without seeing the full picture. That's just how it's done, Marty, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think, it was interesting because I think usually with regards to that end boss in a raid, they pump out this cinematic, and it's usually like a massive set piece of like where we're going next. And this wasn't really, when you take it on its own. It's a very short cinematic. It doesn't really tell you anything. It just gives Sarkarif, their last few breaths and basically saying, like, they were led astray. And then you're like, oh, that's it. Right. So, like, it's not really satisfying enough to say, like, yeah, of course, we knew Sarkarif was in the wrong, and we knew Sarkarif was chasing something that they probably shouldn't have been. And you didn't really get enough from that. But like you say, with the introduction of a quest after, getting to go back into the raid, getting to take that in, the aftermath of everything, it really fleshed it out and allowed you to direct the narrative then to where we're going to next. And I think Dragonflight as a whole has been very good from like the start point of the expansion to where we are now with regards to the narrative. There hasn't really felt like there's been too many missing parts, which I think when you look back at previous expansions, don't you? You feel like, well, yeah, we've got to here, but how did we get here? Or maybe it was a book or something, or it was something outside the game. But it feels like they've really turned it up to 11 now with like telling the story in game and getting you from point A to point B. Because I think, like I say in the past, it's just about like you've gone from A to B and you're not really sure. There's a bunch of stuff in the middle missing.
What's the connection? Where are we going here now?
Yeah.
Besides, it's a new raid, new shiny loot, you know?
Yeah, and it's been like, in a way, a lot slower pace with what's going on. And I think, that's something we talk about here a lot is we don't want the big bad resolved after like a raid or in a patch. Like, we're enjoying this build up of, like there's a plan going on here and it's not the jailer's plan. And it actually seems like it might be well thought out, and you can see some shadows of what might be happening, but again, we're not too sure. And I suppose the thing now is, with Aberrus not really giving us too much about what's going to happen next, it's like, well, the next raid probably should do that.
One of the things that I would love, because I think you brought it up a little bit, is that we're not just checking off the big bad checklist currently. We're actually not doing that, and I would actually like Blizzard. I don't know if it will be any of these characters that we have met or any of these big bads that we've met now, but I would love to see them actually building something up over multiple expansions, so we actually maybe don't get to kill the one of the big baddies that we know of, at least currently. I would love to just see going forward that they're keep doing havoc on the world and being something that we need to take care of.
Yeah, it feels like the next raid, though, we're definitely doing something with an Incarnate. Maybe Farrak is getting to be taken care of or something, because Farrak feels like that expendable member of the group that they're just like, go raise hell, and then when you die, doesn't really matter because you've succeeded in what we wanted. We just want you to cause chaos, and Farrak is a chaos gremlin. And chaos is happening right now in the Dragon Isles with Farrak. So I would be saying right now, I feel like that's where we're heading, because we didn't get that in this raid, and I think we were maybe expecting that, and we weren't, and we were taking down a new narrative. Well, not a new narrative, but a continuing narrative that didn't stray too far away from what it's just it's just branched off a little bit because we had to take care of Saraka, and now we have, and that feels like it's nicely resolved, and now back to the main threat of the Incarnates.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I am wondering though how all this. I know it's probably a little bit still too early to talk about it, but I am wondering how, if any of all this time traveling stuff is going to have any influence on the next raid or not. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Well,
there.
what they'll do is we'll time travel and we'll just come back and do this raid again. They'll just reskin a couple of enemies inside here, and they'll go, there you go, there's your third raid.
Yep.
I should be giving terrible ideas like this out on the airwaves, so
actually it could be fun. I can see something fun in going back into an old raid, but everything is new. Like bosses are new, fights are new, but reusing that location, because why would that not happen? Why would if we clear out some kind of stronghold or something, why would something new not take hold in it?
Well, that's true.
That could be.
Maybe we can do some sort of upside down Black Rock Mountain with 50 bosses. They're all back. Yep. with the 10 raids that's inside that place.
Sure.
So moving back to Aberrus a little bit here. Obviously, we've mentioned Black Dragonflight narrative here is very, very strong. And I guess something that, it didn't irk me, it doesn't make me angry, but at the same time, it's like, well, you're trying to tell a story in here, and you bring in the echo of Neltharion, who is connecting with Rathian and Sibelian and trying to lead them to certain areas and speaking and trying to inform them of decisions, perhaps. But you open up your raid journal, Marty, and it's like, we're going to be fighting Echo of Neltharion almost at the end of this raid. So, I don't know. I don't think we should be trusting this Echo of Neltharion. Just saying.
Well, clearly Rathian and the other Black Dragonflights don't have a dungeon journal.
That's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
They should get one. I mean, they maybe they just don't know the shortcut for how to open it.
Yeah, they've done what I've done. They've rebinded their keys and they can't open it anymore. And it's like, oh, I'm not clicking on that. I'm not a clicker.
Exactly.
But so an idea I've seen in the past regarding that actually is because the journal obviously is a bit of a spoiler for what's coming. And if we are moving into a place where Warcraft's trying to tell more story within raids, or maybe they just do that in the after quest like they've done with Aberrus.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like along the lines of how Final Fantasy 14 does it. Like they're telling a lot of story in raids and it's like big long cutscenes. People ain't gonna like that. But at the same time, it's like, would it be cool if you opened your journal and actually the entry didn't appear until you like reached that encounter? It was almost like question marked out until you reach that encounter. But obviously with data mining, right? It's you're gonna know this stuff anyway. So maybe it's pointless, Marty. But what do you think?
I mean, I definitely think you can do something there because, you know, sure, there is data mining, but you don't have to watch it. I actually do these days try to stay away from too much data mining because I just want to experience it instead. Though when cutscenes come out, I do tend to watch them because, you know, everybody else in the guild be talking about it and doing the same thing. So, you know, better to spoil myself than someone else doing it for me. But yeah, I think you can definitely do something about it, but I think that there might be some progression raiding guilds who you know might want those, you know, small nuggets of information that's in there. Though I know that they have been talking about that, at least for the Race to World first, that, you know, the dungeon journal doesn't, you know, show the mythic encounters until you know, you've killed the boss, you know, something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's like such a small thing that it's probably not something that Blizzard will throw loads of development money after, but something like that could be cool to just try and avoid spoilers. But then again, I don't really read the dungeon journal when I go in and learn a new fight. I prefer just going in a little bit blind actually and see what happens. So I, you know, and then if we can't figure it out, then we start looking at sources.
Yeah, I feel like it would be nice, but we're in an age now where, like, even Blizzard themselves are spoiling what's coming in a way with their roadmaps and such. Like, so I think we've moved past those days where it's like, oh, we're going to keep stuff a surprise. And I think they do try and encrypt certain things, but generally everything is just known ahead of time. And I'm a bit like yourself, even though we're doing a World of Warcraft podcast, I'm like, I don't really need to know everything that's coming just yet until I'm actually experiencing it. And, you know, if you listen to this podcast, you're kind of experiencing the content at a bit of a snail's pace. You know, we're all guys here. We're reacting very slowly to what's happening. But it gives you time to digest it and think about it and not reacting totally on face value.
And I actually do kind of like the whole aspect of not, you know, looking too much into what's coming and up ahead, because I remember something in the last patch that happened that I really enjoyed happened that way. And that was that I went to that new island and I was like, why do I even need to go open up this, you know, open all these doors in this vaults and stuff like that? And then you said to me, hey, it's because of this ring and you can get these different gems, and that made me realize, oh, that's why I want to do it. And I went into and did some research, so, you know, and talked to other people. So it became way more like natural progression that, you know, I don't understand why I'm doing this. I'm talking to my fellow players, and then, you know, then we together discover and figure out why we need to do things. And I kind of like that approach as well. I kind of like that thing.
I've just had a message in my ear to tell you, no, you're doing it wrong. You are a noob.
I know that. So don't need a message in the ear to knowing that.
So Aberrus, Marty, obviously we've been rating it. I've been rating it on the most hardest difficulty possible. You've been a bit more casual.
Yeah.
You rate on heroic. I rate on looking for raid. So how has your guild been finding heroic difficulty? How have you been finding it? Has it been much of a step up from Vault of the Incarnates, or how have you been getting on?
I think for me personally, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. Also because I have had some quite busy time, so we raid twice a week. But I think currently, like in average, I raid 1.5 days a week, because I have to miss out on every other raid, and also it's in the summer vacation, so I was going to festivals and stuff like that. So some fights I was there for.
We don't want to hear about your social life. Come on.
No, but I'm just setting up that, some fights I was there for, the first few tries, and other fights I was there when we already had killed it before. So, obviously when you already figured out the puzzle, it's well, when everyone else have figured out the puzzle, then you're just there and you're just, I just put this one healing piece over here and everything is good.
I've got this vision in my head of Marty just lying on a beach with the phone sitting beside him, just waiting for a text message saying, yeah, we've got it on farm. Marty just sits up
finally
from his, he's just heads back to the computer, but he's been just sun tanning all summer.
Pretty much. No, so I will say this though. I don't know if how we're going to attack this, but I'm going to attack the last boss, if that's all right with you, to talk a little bit about
that. Take Sarkov down.
I think my initial reaction to this fight compared to the previous last encounter, I think the previous one had a lot of phases, sure, and I think one of my complaints was that it was simply too long. I don't like those long fights, but it had a lot of different phases where a lot of different things happen, and I felt like, it was like a progression. You get the first platform on the wraps, then you go to the second platform and get that on the wraps, and you continue through the fight that way. Where this one was just one hot mess all the way through when we were progression, and I was like, okay, so much stuff is happening. It just felt like one big mess on this one platform, and you're being pulled back and forth, and then you're down below, and then you're up top, and there was so many things going on, and everything was just thrown at you pretty much at the same time. Sure, there were some of it was in a few different phases, but still, especially that last phase in the beginning felt really, really chaotic. So I do feel like that if I had to, rank, these two end bosses that we have so far, this is actually on a second place. I don't feel like it was that great compared to others that we've seen so far.
Yeah, if you compare it to the Razagoth fight, I think that's gonna be hard to top for a while. I think, just because there was a lot of moving parts of that, but like you say, the way that it unfolded and actually came together in the end, it felt like a really good progression within the raid encounter itself, albeit quite a long fight.
Yeah.
But again, for me, doing that one on looking for raid, it was actually a really enjoyable fight, and even though we wiped a lot, it was still quite an enjoyable fight to learn and get to grips with, and something that we talked about when we talked about Vault of the Incarnates was just that feeling when it all clicked, and all the phases were right. And yes, Sarkov, a bit different with just, we're gonna stick you in this void crusted room, and we're just gonna
one-shot
lots of shiny stuff. Did I one-shot? Yes, I did.
There we go.
I did. But I was dead for most of the fight. So the first time I did it, I actually didn't understand the feathers and the closing the portals and getting out, not closing portals, but
the knockback.
No, you get teleported away, you get phased out.
All right, so you need to pick up the three circles.
Yeah, I got confused what I had to pick up. I thought I had to pick up all the
small ones,
speed boost things. Got very confused. I just died, and I was the only one who died. It was very embarrassing. That Sarkov died. I have been back since, and obviously corrected my ways in that regard. But just I think the whole raid itself on looking for raid, and I mean it's not a brag or anything like that because it's looking for raid, but generally it felt like there wasn't too many mechanics here in the entire raid. It felt very just tank and spanky, which brings me back to the old Black Rock Mountain feel. Just like it's just tank and spank everything here. And again, that could be for various reasons, like we're in the second patch, so people came into this way more geared and prepared, I suppose, for what was coming. But
it's kind of weird because I felt like Razagath felt like an end of the expansion boss. It didn't really, to me, feel like this is the beginning of an expansion end boss. It felt like if this was an end of the expansion end boss. And then we get this one, which actually sort of feels probably more like a first raid, maybe second raid, as it is end boss. So yeah, I don't know how Blizzard has been, figuring out how all this is going to fit together. But yeah, this raid overall definitely felt easier, which is weird because it should, but it felt easier than the initial raid. Usually it's the other way around. Usually it's the initial raid that feels easy and then sort of, bumps up the difficulty. But this one actually felt opposite.
So that's why you're enjoying Aberrus so much, because it's so easy and you've got it on farm and you're getting all your sweet loots and you're just waiting now for the next raid to pop.
I think I'm enjoying it way more because I actually, this time around, have chosen to just focus solely on one character. Where in the beginning, I think I had like a few different healers that I did have a main, but as soon as we got the opportunity to go in with ults, I went in with ults and stuff like that. And I actually haven't this time around. I've focused on my main. I'm enjoying, just I'm pretty much, I think the only way that I can actually get better gear is to actually venture into mythics or high level mythic plus, and so it just feels good to have that I've done everything I can feeling to my character.
Yeah. So with that out the way, do you have a favorite encounter in this raid? Something that you're looking forward to doing each time you go through that clear, or is there anything that's not really standing out there?
I feel like that I kinda, in one way, I enjoy Rashok, but I also really dislike going into looking for raid as a healer, and people don't understand that you should not overlay the AoEs on the circles on each other, because it will just make your healer's life way more miserable. But I don't know.
Hard mode.
Yeah,
hard mode, Marty.
It definitely is. But I don't know. I just feel like it's a nice fight. It has two different phases that alternates, and it's pretty straightforward. But there's still good stuff. There's like phases where you just need to heal your ass off, and I don't know. It's a simple fight, but I don't know. I just kind of like it.
Yeah, I like the Jarden presence within Aberrus because it nods to them as well, because you see their presence very heavily dominated in the Zarlik Cavern, so obviously that they would have a space here as well. And I think, yeah, the Rashok fight, what sticks out is just like there's a lot going on here, and when someone gets that wrong, it's absolutely madness. And I don't know, I quite enjoyed when some people got it wrong in looking for raid, because it was like, oh, it's getting spicy in here now.
Yeah, and it's either that or the tanks messing up the taunting thing.
So it's always the tanks or the healers. It's never the DPS. Just
to be fair, I don't feel like... the DPS can totally F up when, the overlapping of circles. So I think everyone has like a thing here where they can mess up and yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's a simple fight, I find, but I kind of just enjoy it.
Maybe this is just what we needed, right? After the Razagath and the stress of all that, just a nice little raid to see us through to whatever's coming next. And I think it will be will be interesting to compare, like when we get the third raid, just like where do they take that? Will they ramp it up a little bit more? Because I know people were saying about the tuning of this raid was maybe a little bit under, and that probably, is backed up by many claims of people saying, well, it did feel a bit easier. It didn't feel quite as challenging as perhaps
even Even the raid for World First was over in less than a week, where I think last few times it's been minimum 2 weeks. So I think overall it's been a little bit down-tuned. I don't want to say under-tuned because I don't know what their plan is, but at least down-tuned for compared to what we're used to.
And you can't argue with the professionals, I suppose. So if we're saying it on every difficulty, like LFR, normal, heroic, mythic, it's probably there to see. But we will see what happens next when we get the third raid. But overall thoughts, do you think this is something you're going to look back on fondly? Are you going to be, sitting there at night with a photo frame of Sakharov and just thinking, that was, take me back to that raid?
I mean, I think the first raid is still high up on the list. And, obviously I don't know what they will be doing with the next few raids, but I actually don't think this raid will be, something that we'll remember too much when this expansion is over. I think it was there, I think it was good, but I don't think it was super special. So, but I mean, those raids needs to be there as well, and at least this was a good one of those types of raids. So yeah, we'll see.
You've heard what Marty thinks. You've heard what I think. But what do you think? Will you have fond memories of Aberrus, the Shadowed Crucible, long beyond this expansion? Or are you done with it? Are you fed up with it? Do you just want the next raid? You can let us know in places that you do that. And sadly, we have reached the end of this episode. It's been a great chat about Aberrus and all the things going on in there. And I think ultimately, we're just excited for what's coming next. I think the raid itself has set up the narrative and the story, probably subtly, not in a dramatic way, which for me, that's very, very exciting because it leaves a big question mark of what next.
I just hope it's not with the old gods.
Oh, it won't be those guys.
No.
They haven't been in expansion for years. I've been Tom. That's been Marty.
Hey.
And we've been talking WoW. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in, champion. Did you enjoy this episode of Talking WoW? If so, why not drop a review on your podcast catcher of choice, or leave us a comment. You can find Talking WoW on Twitter or YouTube over at Talking WoW. Hope to see you again soon.